Hello and welcome to Everybody Pulls the Tarp. I'm your host, Andrew Moses. With me today, a very, very special guest, Arturo Elizondo, the co-founder and CEO of Clara Foods. Arturo is a Forbes 30 under 30 honoree, and he is reimagining the way the world produces its proteins. Arturo, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks for having me. Really excited.
I'm really excited to have you, Arturo, and I'm so fascinated with what you're doing at Clara Foods and want to dig into it all. So let's go way back. So you're raised in Texas, so you're sitting there in Texas. When did you decide that you want to change the way the world gets its protein?
It's a little bit of a crazy story, but I grew up in Texas and I'm Mexican by heritage. So animal protein was like such a huge part of my upbringing and my culture and my life. And a meal wasn't a meal unless there was a big old steak or eggs or something in the at the center of the plate. And so, like any good Texan, I had my barbecue every Sunday, and like any good Mexican, I had my two extra breakfasts every single morning. And I never thought about where my food came from until I I began interning at the USDA in the sub agency that regulates all the slaughterhouses. And I really wanted to pursue a career in government because I wanted to make an impact in some shape or form. I felt that in government, at least at the time, this was 10 years ago, I really felt inspired to use the public sector to help make a positive change. And while I was at the USDA, I just my mind was blown in terms of how massive the animal protein production complex really was. Like I had no idea that we slaughtered over 1 million animals every single hour in the U.S. alone. Like it was just mind blowing, and purely at this point mainly to satiate our palates, right? I think we're consuming these products because they're delicious and they're essentially entrenched in our lives in a really deep way, and so I saw how incredibly massive this production process was, and just ultimately how difficult it was to really make it ethical and sustainable, and all the problems endemic in factory farming. And it was really for the first time I was confronted with my plate, and like what and understanding how the food that I was eating every single day, at least 3 times a day, was being made.
So this show is called Everybody Pulls the Tarp, and it's based upon a philosophy that I have that great teams and great organizations are powered by individuals who contribute in unexpected ways, well beyond their job description. And I think what's interesting in your case, Arturo, is that
Mm.
there was no job description for what you wanted to do, right? You wanted to completely reimagine the way that something is done. So what was your first step in beginning that journey when you said, I want to do something?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, so I was like incredibly set on like following this government career track. I had interned for my congressman. I was at the USDA. I had interned at the White House. I went to Harvard and I studied government. I was like trying to get on the fast track for like going into public service and like doing the best I could there. And it in some ways, like the more that I learned about the food system, and it was this overall kind of longer path for me. Like I didn't want to stop eating burgers. I didn't want to stop eating my eggs for breakfast. Like I didn't want to be doing these things. And so the more kind of self work that I did, the more I realized like, hey, this is a lifestyle that I want to like that I want to to live out more, and that I want to eat where I feel like my values are aligned, and that when I'm eating, I'm contributing to something as opposed to being, as opposed to having a negative impact. And so I had completely changed my diet, and I realized how hard it was. And I there was a part of me that wanted to make a difference, but I didn't know in what way. And I had all of these, I was talking to all these people because I thought someone had the answer. Someone was going to tell me, hey, you need to go to San Francisco and I start this company because no one else is going to. um, and and that wasn't really going to happen unless I actually voiced it myself. And there were people who told me this, but I didn't take the step because of that. As much as I realized, look, as I was interviewing for all these different jobs, I was right out of right out of college. I was looking, I was interviewing, and like I could tell like my heart wasn't in it. Like I there was something about it where I felt like I was going through the motions. Everyone else was super excited about the jobs that they were getting in school. And I was like, I know that if I take this job as this financial analyst or as this, political appointee in the federal government or as, working for a big tech company, I knew I wasn't going to be the best. And it wasn't because I didn't have the skills, but I knew that I could only really get motivated by something and get my butt out of bed every day if I was working for something that truly resonated with my values. And that's when once I made that realization, like, oh my God, like I know I'm not going to be great at these other jobs because my heart really wasn't in it. And I decided, you know what, I I need to be part of the food tech ecosystem in some shape or form. And I had a phone call with one of my mentors who honestly believed in me more than I believed in myself at the time. And he was like, "You can do this!" Like, and for me, founding a company was so like it was like a world apart. I was taught to like draw with color inside the box, right,
Right.
inside the lines, and I hadn't done I'd always played it safe, and this was like a moment of reckoning for me. And but after that phone call, I was like, "You're right," and so I at that time I booked a one-way ticket to San Francisco, and I had no job, I had no place to stay, but I knew that I wanted to be where food was being reimagined, and I was like, look, I'm going to give it a few months and try it out.
So that classic entrepreneurial story, that one-way ticket to San Francisco. So you start Clara Foods. So
Yeah,
for my audience,
yeah,
explain in a minute or so what are you doing at Clara Foods? Really, really interesting.
yeah. So um, we're a B2B company. Our goal is to be essentially the Intel Inside for food. How do we upgrade all the foods that people know and love with ingredients and particularly proteins that are sustainable but incredibly functional and have the taste and the texture that we as people know and love. And so how do we start revamping the back end of food production? And the way that we do that is by making real animal protein without using a single animal. And as crazy as it sounds, this technology has been around for 40 years. So, and I can go more in depth on it at some other point. But at its most basic level, we brew proteins. So, in the same way that brewers use yeast to convert sugar into alcohol to make beer and wine, the yeast that we work with naturally converts sugar into protein. And so then we can actually design the yeast to make specific kinds of proteins. Like we can hack it essentially like a computer. And we insert code like DNA, but instead of zeros and ones, it's A, T, C, and G. And we can essentially program the yeast to make different kinds of proteins. And we are starting with working on egg proteins because they're super functional and super and really high quality proteins. And we thought, look, is there a way that instead of using 600 gallons of water to make a dozen eggs that people buy every single, almost every single week, can we do it with a fraction of the resources required to produce it?
Take
And
600 gallons of water to produce a dozen eggs.
yeah,
Wow. So you're completely reimagining how we produce the food, but it probably didn't just happen like that, right? People see these entrepreneurial stories and they see these startups emerge, and they think that it just happens overnight. I know that you've done tremendous amounts of research and you immersed yourself in this subject matter and in this industry. Maybe talk a minute about that and what that process was like of really developing the the product and the process.
yeah, absolutely. And I I can't take credit for this. We have an incredible group of scientists, team of scientists who are trying to push the frontier of science at the company, who get inspired by to do that work day in and day out. And I had initially, my co-founder is a microbiologist by training. So in terms of the work that's got in, we've pumped probably like $40+ million into this technology over the last 5.5 years. It's run like building a building a biotech company, particularly like using biology to develop next generation products, is incredibly time intensive. It's basically bringing a drug to market like with pharma companies, but we're doing it for food, and so it's an incredibly intensive process, and it really is a marathon, where you kind of have to go in and day in, day out. We don't. It takes a long time to get revenue. It takes a long time to get validation from customers for products. And I wasn't a scientist coming into this, and so I for the first several months, I literally sat on like right by my co-founder's bench as he was like pipetting and doing his work. I was sitting in the lab to like really understand the technology. And then I started just Googling and just getting trying to get as smart as I could about the technology, the space, and I think just overall getting a crash course in the very beginning to start getting up to speed, and then ultimately being open to asking the dumb questions, which for me was also uncomfortable, because I had a tendency to like want to be prepared, right? To be really smart, to be thoughtful, and I would ask, and then I would go in and ask, well, how do you do this, or why is that? And really, really basic questions. What is that? What is that piece of machine that we're using? This centrifuge I had never seen before. So there was also that reckoning of being humble, and being open to not being open to being proven wrong, and to being taught. And I think that was really helpful.
It's really impressive, Arturo, because I think one of the things that I've observed lately in the world, right, is that information is always available at our fingertips these days, and people want such like rapid ingestion of information, right?
Yeah.
People they want an answer to something, they want to understand a subject matter, and usually they can just find it on their phone, or
Yeah.
pull it up on Google really quickly. But to truly drive like real impact like you're doing, and to append an entire industry, it requires really immersive research and thought. And it's kudos to you for being open-minded to that, and humble enough to go along that journey. But one subject I want to hit on there, you mentioned the team, you mentioned a co-founder, you mentioned a team of folks around you. When you're building something like this, how do you go about identifying the right folks to surround yourself with?
Yeah, it's a question that I still ask myself. I think hiring is something that I've made a ton of mistakes on, and I've also gotten it so, and and also been very proud that we've made some incredible hires. But it's a learning process, and I think a lot of it has been for me learning to trust my gut. But what I think the thing that unites most of like the rock stars at Clara are just like the people who um who come to us, or who are just like really stubborn. Like I've told people, like, you know what, it's not really the right fit, and they just kind of keep pushing, and like keep trying to prove us wrong. And and that persistence has just been amazing. But there's what's always there for what has been the common thread in terms of the best people at the company, are those who like really who feel incredibly strongly about what we're doing. And it's not about like they have to be like hardcore vegans, right? Like who want to change, like who want to who want to bring these products to market because they're vegan, or because their families are vegan, or because they're huge like environmentalists, or because they're because of the mission of the company. I think that is true for a lot of people. at the company, it's also like one of our some of our best scientists are those who really think about how do we who just are so obsessed with like pushing the frontier of science, like doing work that has never been done before, doing experiments in a way that had never really been thought of, and just like and either really like resonate with the mission or really resonate with the work that they're doing, but that they're there, that no one the ones who are not lukewarm, if that makes sense.
Do,
There's like
do, you-
they're on fire about something at the company.
do you think that that's something that people are just hardwired with, or can people learn to be that passionate and immersed in, like you say, pushing the frontier of science? Is that just something you either have or you don't have, and it's just a matter of identifying people who have that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I'm biased because I think you can teach yourself anything. I think we as humans are basically are like computers as well. Like we can program ourselves to do things, to get excited about things, to push ourselves when we don't want to, and to discover passions that we didn't even know we had. And and I my sense is that it can be something to be developed. I mean, for a lot of people, it's something that's inherent, and I think that's something that was true for me. But I've never been on fire about something as much as with food. Like I know I will never leave the food industry as like in my entire life. And whether it's Clara or something else, I know like this is why I was put on this earth to do, and I have that kind of clarity. And I know a lot of people who don't, and I think a part of it is discovering. I think we all want to find our purpose, and so I do think that it's something that over time, depending on the different lived experiences of people, like they'll discover this. And one of our amazing our first scientist, Doug, he was actually connected to us by one of our investors. And I think ultimately to your question about how do we get really great people, is oftentimes when people come to us and they find us, or through our network, we have this really amazing person, that is about to leave this company, like they should talk to you guys. And so like there's been that kind of inbound interest that I'm really excited about, that's been really really helpful. But that first scientist, his name's Doug, and he'll tell you his life story. It's incredible, but he like just was like a trouble, like just like a rebel growing up, and just like wasn't super turned on by school, and he was having a hard time. And then he went into science and like really hit his stride. And tonight, like now at Clara, he goes home and like reads papers on like what's the latest research saying, like what's the latest, what are the newest experiments coming, what's coming in the future. And there's this real fire about him that I love, and that I've seen where he was before and where he is now is very different. And so my sense is that it is something that gets developed.
So take us behind the scenes a little bit into life as a CEO of a food tech startup. Everybody thinks that the life as a CEO of a startup is glamorous and all spending time with investors and giving big speeches and Forbes 30 under 30 honors. But I know it is not all glamorous. So give me an example or two of some things that maybe people would be surprised that Arturo Elizondo does on a daily basis or regular basis to keep things going.
In terms of like the grind, like not the
Sure,
glamour
sure.
thing. Um, yeah, it's. I mean, I think for the most part, one thing that I've learned is to like have a gut of steel, like because it's a roller coaster. Like like almost on a regular basis, I like on any given day, I will like have like some of the highest highs where it's like, oh my god, we're gonna like change the world, and like something happens in the lab or something happens with one of our partners or investors. We're like, oh my god, like we're like this is a rocket ship and we're gonna we're taking off. And then the a minute later, we get these I experience some of my lowest lows, and it's that roller coaster of a ride that is is really tough. And I think, um, so that for me would be would be the, in some ways, some of like the best parts of the job, that you really feel, that there's this incredible high, but then also this pit in your stomach when like something is not going well at the company. And I think for me, in terms of my day to day, it really, honestly, the biggest part is I spend most of my days in meetings with my team, and I've learned to transition from an individual contributor. As amazing as I think I am, and as effective and as efficient as I think I am, like you max out, and I maxed out, where I was like, I'm not as helpful to the company as like trying to push this project forward. I'm much more effective actually supporting a team to get, to really drive the impact of the company. And so then I've now been transitioning to being more of a coach than the quarterback, and really driving the play, and more than anything, helping enable, and really, lift our leadership team.
So how do you go about doing that, right? Because a lot of times I'm
Yeah.
sure the CEO is sitting in a meeting, you're the co-founder, you're sitting in a meeting, and the team just is going to look to you for the answer. Arturo, what's the answer? Give us the answer. How do
Hmm.
you keep that team, like as you say, you coach them
Yeah.
through and end up enabling an outcome that's better than something you could have come up with yourself?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it was. I mean, it's a huge trial and error, right? Also, like knowing that, like literally knowing that I can't be doing it myself anymore. Like there was this like moment of reckoning where I'm like, I just don't have enough time in the day. Like I this guy's super smart, or that this other person's really great. Like really realizing it, and then I think ultimately like being intentional about it. Like sometimes I will just not talk at a meeting and kind of like let them figure it out, and it's so tempting to be like, at least for me, it's so tempting for me to be like, oh, this is what we need to do. And and I have a coach that I work with as well, and one of what some of his advice has been, just let them come to you. Like resist the urge to always have the answer, because if you keep having the answer, everyone is going to continue looking to you. And so there is this, again, like this element of um, wanting to like wanting to meaningfully transition. And if I want the best for the company, I know that that's really where I can be most helpful, is to start, making, honestly, that like focusing on the things that where I am uniquely able to add value to the company, which is now going to be transitioning more towards, elevating Clara's public profile now that we're launching our first several products. And so having people at the company that I really trust, and part of the way to build that trust is by letting them impress you, and like giving them the opportunity, feeling them, making them feel empowered to make decisions, to mess up, knowing that you're there when they need you, but really, allowing them to walk and thrive on their own. And it's really hard, especially it has been for me.
And you have to be intentional about it, as you said,
Yeah.
which is really important. Let's before I let you go, I want to know, where is the future of Clara Foods? So in your vision, will there come a day when, I don't eat any animal protein, or does the consumer have a choice?
Yeah. It's such a great question, and I think that's, um, it's so seductive to say like it's going to be this, and I don't pretend to know the future, but what I can say is that with the way that technology is progressing, the way that consumers are behaving, and the way that the world needs us to change, I think if we want to have a fighting shot at living in a world that is habitable, we need to fundamentally transform the way that we eat. There's just not enough land or water on the planet to satiate the kind of demand that we have. Because it's not just Americans. Like, if the rest of the world begins eating the way that we do, it is disastrous. Um, again, like with the eggs and with all these examples, how much water and land and energy, not to mention all the collateral damage that happens, the environment, like the runoff. I mean, like there's a million documentaries about the impact of our food, of rearing animals for protein. And so at least in a factory farm setting, again, like and that's really what we're after, is replacing really providing an alternative to the factory farming model. And so the way that I see it is, I think the way, so in the grocery store of the future, you will have, right now, where you go to the meat section and it's like meat everywhere, or in the egg section you'll have all these different eggs, or in the cheese section, they'll start looking more like how the dairy section looks today. And I think that you'll start seeing more and more of these alternatives, right? So when you go to get your milk, now it's no, it used to be just like milk, like throughout, and then like maybe one SKU, one brand that was making soy milk, and
Right.
that was it. You go to the grocery store today, and you see almond milk, hemp milk, soy milk, oat milk, hemp milk, rice milk, every coconut milk, everything under the sun. And now it's actually a pretty sizable part of the of the milks, of the dairy section. But I see that just being like, now like that the majority of products will be all these different options for people, and that animal products will be reserved more for the, more sort of like the free range, grass fed beef, or these like more these higher quality products from the animal part, and that the factory farming alternatives will now be actually much more plant-based, much more alternative, and much more sustainable.
Arturo, well, this has been an absolute pleasure. The work you're doing is so inspirational. I can't wait to see where Clara Foods goes and where you take this. I will surely be following along. Thank you for joining Everybody Pulls the Tarp today.
Yeah, Andrew, thank you so much for having me and for being able to share our story. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.
You got it, Arturo. Take care.
Bye.